Hey guy, welcome back to Sleep Among Titans, where we drift through strange and quiet corners of the past, perfect for listening before you sleep. Tonight we're going to step into a time where whispers could be more dangerous than swords, and secrets were traded not with coin. Imagine, if you will, the deep velvet hush of a late medieval night. The air, cool and still, carries the faint, earthy scent of damp stone and something else. Something metallic and sharp, perhaps the distant tang of cold iron from a smithy's last embers, or the subtle, almost imperceptible smell of old parchment hidden away. You find yourself in a place of shadowed doorways and winding alleys, perhaps in a city where the great cathedral bells have just rung out their final resonant chime for the evening. Above you, a sliver of moon like a watchful eye occasionally peeks through scudding clouds, casting fleeting patterns of light and profound darkness. The only sound is the gentle, rhythmic creak of your own footsteps on cobbled streets, strangely amplified in the quiet. Every shadow seems to stretch and breathe every muffled sound from behind. A closed shutter feels like a whispered secret. You are not a knight in shining armor, nor a humble peasant tending your fields. Tonight you are a ghost in human form, carrying something precious and perilous. The weight of it, though invisible, presses on your chest, a quiet thrumming beneath your ribs. A single flickering torchlight from a distant guard tower momentarily catches your eye, then fades back into the vast ink-black canvas of the sleeping city. There's a subtle chill that seeps into your bones, not just from the night air, but from the chilling knowledge that a single misstep, a solitary wrong word, could unravel everything. The silence here isn't empty. It's pregnant with unspoken truths and unseen watchers. This is the quiet world of secrets, a world where the very air seems to hold its breath. In our modern world, information zips across continents in the blink of an eye, carried by invisible waves and glowing screens. We're accustomed to a constant hum of news updates and facts accessible at the slightest touch. But step back with me now into the quiet expanse of the Middle Ages, and you'll find a landscape utterly different. Here, information wasn't a commodity to be broadcast. It was a precious, often dangerous whisper. Imagine a time without telephones, without newspapers, without the vast interconnected webs we now take for granted. How did a king in France know what his rival in England was planning? How did a duke understand the discontent brewing among his own restless peasants, or the true strength of a neighboring lord's army? The answers weren't found in dispatches delivered by galloping couriers alone, but in the subtle art of observation, the careful cultivation of rumor, and the clandestine exchange of secrets. In essence, through a primitive yet remarkably effective form of intelligence gathering. The medieval world was a patchwork of shifting loyalties and competing powers. Feudal lords vied for land and influence, kingdoms clashed over successions, and even within the walls of a seemingly unified realm, conspiracies could simmer beneath the surface. In such a volatile environment, knowledge was indeed power, perhaps even more so than the sharpest sword or the strongest fortress. A timely warning about an impending attack, a whispered detail about a rival's financial woes, or a hint of dissent among an enemy's advisors could turn the tide of a battle or reshape the destiny of a dynasty. So who were these quiet gatherers of whispers, these shadow walkers in a world of stone and soil? There wasn't a formal spy agency as we understand it today. Instead, the network of medieval intelligence was a complex organic thing woven from many threads. Sometimes it was a trusted merchant, his travels through diverse lands providing a perfect cover for observing troop movements or gauging the mood of distant populations. His knowledge of trade routes and local customs made him an unassuming yet invaluable asset. He might bring back not just exotic spices or fine silks, but also the subtle scent of a brewing rebellion or the quiet desperation of a besieged town. Then there were the clerical figures, monks, priests, even traveling friars. Their vows and spiritual duties often allowed them passage where others might be barred. They moved between monasteries, attended church councils, and heard confessions, sometimes unwittingly, sometimes deliberately, picking up fragments of conversation, snippets of gossip, and even veiled threats. The sanctity of their calling often shielded them from suspicion, allowing them to carry messages or observe without drawing undue attention. Imagine the quiet hum of a monastery scriptorium, where a diligent scribe, under the guise of copying sacred texts, might be subtly altering a coded message or noting down a conversation overheard from the abbot's private chambers. And of course, there were the disgruntled servants or ambitious courtiers within rival courts. Loyalty in the Middle Ages could be a fickle thing often bought with promises of land titles or simply cold hard coin. A chamberlain overhearing a strategic discussion, a lady-in-waiting privy to her mistress's correspondence, or a stable master noting the arrival of a suspicious visitor. These seemingly minor figures could hold the keys to critical information. Their motives were as varied as human nature itself, perhaps bitterness over a perceived slight greed for a better life, or a genuine belief in a different claimant to the throne. The methods of communication were by necessity subtle and often ingenious. There were no telephones, no telegrams. Instead, messages might be memorized and carried in the mind of a trusted courier, a perilous task given the risks of capture or sudden death on the road. Sometimes letters were penned, often using simple ciphers or codes. A substitution of letters, a rearranged word, or a secret mark known only to the sender and receiver. These letters might be hidden in the hollow heels of boots sewn into the lining of cloaks, or even delivered by the swift flight of a trained homing pigeon, though such birds were rare and highly prized assets, not always reliable over long distances or through harsh weather. The true danger for anyone involved in this shadowy world wasn't just the risk of discovery, but the chilling lack of a safety net. There were no international conventions, no prisoner exchanges for captured spies. If you were caught, you were a traitor, plain and simple. The consequences were brutal and swift, designed to deter others and extract any last morsels of information. The very notion of due process, as we understand it, was a distant dream for those accused of such crimes. As you listen to the gentle rustle of the night outside, let your mind drift to these hidden figures. They lived in a constant state of heightened awareness, their senses finely tuned to every subtle shift in the air, every unusual sound. Their lives were a delicate dance on the edge of a precipice, their existence a testament to the enduring human need for knowledge, even when that knowledge came at an unbearable cost. This was a world where trust was a rare and fragile thing, easily shattered, and a whispered secret could be a sentence of life or a decree of death. As the moon continues its slow journey across the medieval sky, and the flickering torchlight from the guard tower fades almost entirely from view, let's turn our attention to the very heart of a spy's existence, the double life. Imagine trying to navigate every waking moment with a meticulously crafted facade, a mask so perfectly fitted it almost becomes a second skin. This wasn't just about keeping a secret. It was about being two people simultaneously. For a medieval spy, the default state wasn't just alertness. It was a profound, pervasive distrust. Not just of others, but in a strange way of themselves. Every gesture, every word, every casual glance had to be weighed and measured. Was that genuine laughter at a tavern, or a forced performance to deflect suspicion? Was that moment of quiet contemplation a genuine reflection, or merely an act of stillness to avoid drawing attention? The line between their true self and their assumed identity blurred, creating a psychological burden that few in our time could truly comprehend. Consider the ordinary routines of life. For a peasant spy, perhaps a seemingly simple farmer tilling his fields by day, the shift was subtle but constant. While his hands worked the earth, his mind would be far away, processing the whispers he heard from passing merchants, observing the unusual movements of a lord's retinue, or even calculating the approximate number of men a rival village could muster for a levy. His calloused hands and sun-weathered face were his disguise, his apparent simplicity a shield. But beneath that exterior, a restless, analytical mind was constantly at work, categorizing, cross-referencing, and seeking the threads of information hidden in plain sight. The very dust on his boots might carry a story if only one knew how to read it. Or perhaps our spy was a merchant like the one we touched upon earlier. He might travel from one bustling market town to another, his pack laden with fine silks from the east or sturdy woolens from Flanders. He'd haggle over prices, discuss trade routes, and perhaps even complain about the latest tax imposed by the local baron. All of this was utterly convincing, a seamless part of his daily routine. Yet tucked away amongst his ledger books or hidden within the folds of his wares might be a coded message or a meticulously drawn sketch of a newly fortified gatehouse. His discussions about commodity prices could subtly shift to inquiries about local garrisons or the health of a specific noble. The genuine scent of cloves and cinnamon mingling with the subtle cold scent of iron on his person, an unnoticed detail by others, a constant reminder of his true, dangerous purpose. The mental toll was immense. Imagine never truly being able to relax even in your own bed. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar face in the crowd, every sudden silence could send a jolt of ice through your veins. Paranoia wasn't a flaw. It was a survival mechanism. To forget for a single moment who you truly were or who you were pretending to be could mean the difference between life and a brutal, ignominious death. You couldn't share your burdens, couldn't unburden your soul to a priest or a loved one. The very act of doing so would be the ultimate betrayal, not just of your mission, but of the people who might suffer if your cover was blown. The silence that surrounded you was not just the absence of sound, but the oppressive weight of unshared secrets. Consider the minor characters who might also lead such a dual existence. A scullery maid in a lord's kitchen constantly overhearing the drunken boasts of guardsmen or the whispered frustrations of the nobility as they dined. She might be asked to note who visited whom, who ate what, or even the general mood in the great hall. Her seemingly invisible presence, blending into the background of daily chores, made her a potent, if unwitting conduit of information. Her hands perpetually busy with the mundane tasks of scrubbing pots and fetching water, disguised a mind keenly attuned to the subtle currents of power and discontent flowing around her. Even those within the more respected echelons could be living this lie. A scribe in a monastery, meticulously illuminating manuscripts. His days were filled with the quiet scratching of quill on parchment, the faint smell of ink and beeswax. But beneath the cowl, his mind might be memorizing the contents of a newly arrived royal decree before it was officially announced, or noting the frequency of visits from a particular noble to the abbot's private chambers. The tranquil rhythm of monastic life offered a perfect cloak for the restless pursuit of illicit knowledge. The distant church bell chiming softly through the peaceful cloister might mark not just the hours of prayer, but the silent, unseen moments of information gathering. The danger was pervasive, subtle, and often unavoidable. How do you respond to a sudden casual question about your origins, when your fabricated past must perfectly align with the one you've painstakingly constructed? How do you maintain the loyalty of those you secretly report to, while simultaneously feigning unwavering devotion to the very people you are betraying? Every conversation was a tightrope walk, every interaction a potential trap. You had to be an expert actor, a master of improvisation, and possess an almost superhuman memory for every detail of your invented life. This constant vigilance wasn't just tiring, it was corrosive. It ate away at the edges of the soul, leaving behind a hollow where genuine connection once resided. You could never truly belong, never truly settle. Your home, if you had one, was just another part of the disguise. Your family, if they existed, were either a part of the charade or a constant source of unspoken worry, a vulnerability that could be exploited. The very notion of rest became a luxury, a fleeting moment between shadows, never a true embrace of peace. So as the medieval night deepens around us, think of these hidden figures moving through the world like ghosts. They were the eyes and ears of a hidden war fought not with swords on a battlefield, but with whispers in the dark. Their survival depended not on strength, but on subtlety, on the ability to blend, to observe, and to carry the weight of dangerous knowledge without crumbling. It was a lonely, terrifying existence where the greatest threat often came not from a visible enemy, but from the quiet betrayal of a misplaced word or an unguarded glance. As the deep medieval night continues its quiet reign and the last remnants of flickering torchlight from distant watchtowers finally succumb to the darkness, let us delve into how these shadowed figures actually moved information. In a world devoid of the swift, invisible currents of our modern age, how did a crucial detail, perhaps a king's secret alliance or a duke's unexpected financial woes, travel from a whispered conversation in a remote castle to the ears of a distant rival? The answer lay in a network that was often clumsy and slow, yet startlingly effective, woven from human memory, disguised parcels, and the sheer audacity of those who dared to carry dangerous truths. Imagine a world where rumor was often the fastest form of communication, yet also the most unreliable. Every traveler, every pilgrim, every merchant was a potential carrier of news, whether they intended to be or not. A peasant might overhear a fragment of a conversation between knights boasting of their lord's new siege engines. A laundress might notice a particular crest on a banner being mended, suggesting a new visitor to the castle. These tiny fragments, seemingly insignificant, would then be filtered, amplified, or distorted as they passed from mouth to mouth, from village to village. The true art of the medieval spy master was to discern the kernels of truth from the chaff of gossip. The most direct and often most perilous method of conveying vital intelligence was through oral reports. A trusted agent, having gathered information, would then embark on a journey, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, to deliver it directly to their spy master. This meant memorizing every detail, every name, every number, and presenting it without error. Think of the psychological burden. Every rustle in the bushes, every shadowy figure on the road could be an enemy seeking to intercept them. A single blow to the head, a sudden illness, or even a simple misstep, and the crucial intelligence, perhaps forewarning of a flanking maneuver in a coming battle, could be lost forever. The silence of the open road, broken only by the gentle creak of saddle leather or the whisper of the wind through barren trees, amplified every perceived threat. Then there were the written messages, though these were far less common and infinitely more dangerous to carry. Parchment was expensive, literacy was rare, and the act of writing itself could be incriminating. When messages were penned, they often employed rudimentary ciphers. These weren't the complex cryptographic marvels of later centuries. More often, they were simple substitution codes where each letter was replaced by another, or perhaps by a symbol. A basic example might be shifting each letter 3 places down the alphabet, so A becomes D, B becomes E, and so on. Or a simpler, more poetic method might involve the use of specific words known only to the sender and receiver embedded within a seemingly innocent letter about harvest yields or family matters. A letter detailing troop movements might begin, "My dearest cousin, the harvest this year promises to be bountiful with 300 bundles of wheat," referring to soldiers ready by the east field, the eastern gate. Such a message, if intercepted by the uninitiated, would appear harmless. But to the trained eye of an enemy, or worse, to an interrogator determined to break the code, these messages were loaded with hidden meaning. The transport of these written secrets was an art in itself. Sometimes they were carefully sewn into the lining of a messenger's cloak or tunic, hidden from casual searches. Other times they might be placed in hollowed-out walking sticks secreted within the base of a wine cask, or even wrapped tightly and swallowed to be retrieved later, a truly desperate measure. The scent of the leather, the subtle weight of the hidden compartment, these were sensory details that a spy had to become intimately familiar with. The challenges were enormous. Speed was almost non-existent by modern standards. A message from London to Rome could take weeks or even months, depending on weather, political stability, and the hazards of the journey. This meant that intelligence was often outdated by the time it reached its recipient. A king might receive news of a rebellion quelled a fortnight ago, or an alliance that had already dissolved. Reliability was another constant struggle. Was the information accurate? Was it intentionally misleading? In a world where news traveled by word-of-mouth, errors in transmission were common, 1,000 men could easily become 10,000 through the telling, or a small skirmish could be exaggerated into a great battle. A spy master had to cultivate multiple sources, cross-referencing information to verify its authenticity, a painstaking process often reliant on intuition as much as fact. And then there was the ever-present threat of interception. Every road had its brigands, every border its suspicious patrols. A messenger caught with incriminating documents faced not just imprisonment, but often torture and execution. There was no polite questioning. Instead, brutal methods were used to extract the key to the cipher or the names of collaborators. The very act of carrying a secret meant carrying your life in your hands, knowing that a simple search could lead to a horrifying end. Imagine a courier exhausted after days of riding, finally seeing the familiar outline of his destination through the pre-dawn mist. He carries within him not just words but the fate of armies, perhaps even kingdoms. Every beat of his horse's hooves on the muddy path, every rustle of the leaves in the forest sounds like the approach of danger. His hand instinctively reaches for the hidden pouch where the coded letter rests, a constant chilling reminder of the peril he carries. The scent of damp earth and the distant hoot of an owl underscore the loneliness of his mission. Despite these immense difficulties, these rudimentary intelligence networks worked. They were the sinews of power, allowing kings to anticipate invasions, lords to suppress rebellions, and the church to maintain its vast influence. They represent a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of knowledge, even in the most challenging and dangerous circumstances. The medieval spy navigating this treacherous landscape of whispers and secrets was truly a master of survival, relying on their wits, their courage, and their ability to become utterly invisible in plain sight. As the medieval night deepens, wrapping the world in a cloak of profound quiet, let's turn our gaze from the perilous journeys of messages to the very tools a medieval spy might have employed. Unlike the sleek gadgets and digital devices of modern espionage, the tools of the medieval spy were often mundane, deceptively simple, and required far more ingenuity and personal risk to wield. There were no hidden cameras, no miniature microphones, no long-range communication devices. Instead, a spy relied on the very fabric of their everyday world, turning ordinary objects into instruments of clandestine information gathering. Imagine first the most basic and vital tool, the quill and parchment. But not just any quill and parchment. These might be treated with invisible ink. The most common type was simply diluted fruit juice like lemon juice or onion juice. When written on parchment, the words would dry clear, leaving no trace. Only when the recipient gently heated the parchment, perhaps over a candle flame or by a warm hearth, would the hidden message slowly, almost magically appear, the faint brown lines of the secret text revealing themselves. The scent of the parchment warming, perhaps a faint sweet smell of fruit, would be the only indication of its hidden contents. This seemingly innocuous letter, perhaps a mundane note about a harvest or a family matter, held a dangerous secret within its blank spaces. The soft crackle of the parchment as it warmed, the slow reveal of words, transformed a simple act into a moment of suspense. Another subtle method involved wax tablets. Common for everyday notes, these reusable tablets had a thin layer of wax over a wooden base upon which one could scratch messages with a stylus. A spy might write a message on the wax, then gently smooth it over, leaving no visible trace to the casual eye. However, if the recipient knew how to look, the faint indentations of the stylus on the underlying wood, or even on the smoothed wax itself, could be deciphered with careful study, perhaps by angling it just so, in the flickering torchlight of a private chamber. The subtle texture of the wax, the whisper of the stylus, became silent witnesses to hidden communications. Beyond written tools, the spy's arsenal also included more physical yet equally inconspicuous items. Consider the simple seal ring. Many noblemen, merchants, and even literate commoners possessed rings with their unique seal used to authenticate documents by pressing it into softened wax. A spy might possess a forged or copied seal, allowing them to create fake letters or subtly tamper with official correspondence. The coolness of the metal against the finger, the soft impression of the wax, were mundane acts imbued with sinister potential. The gentle clink of the ring against a wooden table, a sound usually ignored, could be a prelude to a carefully executed deception. For transporting small, crucial items, a key, a tiny scroll, a piece of marked coin, hidden compartments were essential. This could be anything from a hollowed-out book, a rare and valuable item in itself, to a false bottom in a wooden box, or even cunningly designed recesses within the sturdy leather of a traveler's boot. Imagine the almost imperceptible weight difference, the slight imbalance that only the spy themselves would recognize. The rough texture of the boot leather, the faint scent of old wood, these became intimately linked with the thrill and danger of the hidden cargo. Every step taken, every shift of weight became a silent affirmation of the secret carried. The concept of disguise was also a tool, though not a physical one. A spy's greatest asset was their ability to blend in, to become part of the background. This involved not just changes in clothing, from a simple peasant's tunic to a merchant's more elaborate attire, or even the robes of a friar, but also changes in mannerism, accent, and even gait. A noble's son might adopt the slouch of a common laborer, or a refined lady the brusque demeanor of a market vendor. This wasn't about theatrical performance. It was about subtle shifts that made one instantly forgettable, a face in the crowd that no one would recall. The rough weave of a peasant's linen against the skin, The different feel of walking on packed earth versus cobbled stone, these sensory shifts would subtly reinforce the adopted identity. And then there were the living tools, the animals. While popular culture often exaggerates their use, trained homing pigeons were indeed used, albeit rarely, and with significant limitations. A pigeon could carry a tiny rolled message tied to its leg over relatively short distances. However, they were vulnerable to hawks' bad weather and could easily be shot down or simply lost. The soft cooing of a pigeon, the gentle flutter of its wings, could signify the arrival of life-saving or life-ending information. The wind rustling through the dovecote carrying the scent of grain and feathers might also carry the unseen whispers of distant lands. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the spy's most critical tool was their mind. Not a physical object, but an ever-present, constantly honed instrument of observation, memory, and deduction. The ability to notice a single unfamiliar horse in a stable, to remember the specific crest on a visiting knight's shield, to recall a seemingly innocuous conversation, word for word, and then to piece these fragments together into a coherent picture. This was the true art. It required immense patience, acute sensory awareness, the faint metallic tang of a new weapon, the distinct smell of smoke from a specific type of wood, the particular chime of a distant church bell signaling a rare event, and an unwavering presence of mind. The use of these tools was never about brute force. It was always about subtlety. A medieval spy didn't break down doors. They gently nudged them open or slipped through unnoticed. They didn't shout secrets. They whispered them or made them appear out of thin air. Their existence was a quiet testament to the enduring human capacity for cunning and resilience, a dance with danger performed with the most unassuming of partners. A piece of parchment, a wax tablet, or just the keen awareness of their own senses in the deepening silence of the night. As the medieval night continues, its silent vigil shrouding the world in a blanket of darkness that seems to absorb all sound, let us now confront the most chilling reality for any medieval spy: the moment of discovery. Imagine the fragile sense of security built painstakingly over months or even years suddenly shattering. The subtle shift in a guard's gaze, a question posed too sharply, the unexpected presence of a familiar face in an unfamiliar place. These tiny cracks could widen into an abyss, pulling the spy and all their secrets into the crushing grip of the abyss. There was no formal protocol for handling spies in the Middle Ages, no concept of prisoner of war status. A spy was by definition a traitor to the realm of viper in the bosom of the host, and the punishment for treachery was swift, brutal, and designed to send a chilling message to anyone else contemplating similar acts. Consider the subtle signs that might betray a spy. Perhaps it was a misplaced word, a slip of the tongue that revealed knowledge they shouldn't possess about a lord's private plans or a garrison's true strength. The seemingly innocent comment uttered in a moment of fatigue or false comfort would hang in the air, a bell tolling the beginning of the end. Or it could be a suspicious accent, a slight divergence in dialect, that to a keen ear hinted at origins from enemy territory. The texture of their clothing might be too fine for their supposed station, or too coarse. The way they held their eating knife, the particular manner in which they bowed, all these seemingly trivial details could be picked apart by observant eyes and ears fueled by suspicion. Sometimes the betrayal came from within their own ranks. A fellow spy captured and broken under torture might reveal names. A handler seeking to save their own skin might sacrifice an agent, or a reward glittering and tempting could persuade a less loyal accomplice to sell out their comrade. The quiet betrayal, a whisper in a dark alley, was often more devastating than any open confrontation. The chill of the night, usually a comforting cloak, would suddenly feel like an icy constricting bind. Once suspicion ripened into accusation, the spy's world would collapse. There were no rights as we understand them. No legal counsel, no presumption of innocence. The spy would likely be seized without warning, often in the dead of night, dragged from their bed or from a quiet corner of a tavern. The rough hands of the guards, the sudden blinding light of a lantern, the metallic scent of their armor, these would be the immediate terrifying realities. Then would come the interrogation, and here the medieval world showed its most brutal face. The goal was not justice but information, to extract the names of collaborators, the nature of the mission, the location of hidden documents, and the identities of those who sent them. Torture was a widely accepted and often celebrated method for achieving this. Imagine the chilling quiet of a dungeon, broken only by the drip of water and the distant echo of a church bell marking a time of day when most honest folk were asleep. Then a different sound might begin, the creak of a rack, the hiss of hot irons, the low groans that no human should ever make. The methods were varied and horrific. The rack would stretch the body until joints dislocated. Thumbscrews would crush bone. Burning irons would sear flesh. Waterboarding, or the question by water, forced immense amounts of water into the victim, mimicking drowning. The pain was designed to break the will, to force confession, to reveal secrets. And very few could withstand such suffering. The scent of fear mingled with the earthy dampness of the dungeon would fill the air. The psychological torment was equally devastating. A spy so carefully trained to keep secrets would be utterly alone with no hope of rescue or support. The sheer terror of the pain, combined with the knowledge that their family or allies might also suffer if they broke, created an unbearable pressure. Many confessed to things they hadn't done simply to end the torment. The whispered pleas, the gasping breaths would fade into the echoing stone walls, unheard by the outside world. And what was the ultimate consequence? If a spy survived the interrogation, their fate was sealed. The execution of a spy was often a public spectacle designed to terrorize the populace and assert the power of the ruling authority. Depending on the region and the severity of the alleged treason, the methods were gruesome. One common fate was hanging, drawing, and quartering for men, particularly in England. This horrific process involved being hanged until near death, then disemboweled while still alive, and finally their body cut into 4 pieces, often displayed in various parts of the city as a grim warning. The scent of blood, the roar of the crowd would be a final terrifying assault on the senses. For women, burning at the stake was a common punishment for treason, a slow and agonizing death. Even if they escaped such a gruesome public display, a spy might simply disappear into a dungeon, their existence forgotten, condemned to die slowly from starvation or disease. Their name would be erased, their memory reviled, and their sacrifice utterly unacknowledged. The story of the medieval spy, therefore, is not one of glamorous daring, but of profound isolation and terrifying vulnerability. Their life was a tightrope walk over an abyss, and a single stumble meant an immediate horrifying fall. As the quiet of the night settles around you, let us remember these shadowed figures who risked everything for a whisper, and often paid the ultimate price in a world where secrets were deadly, and discovery was a sentence of unimaginable suffering. As the deep medieval night continues to enfold the world, a silence broken only by the gentle whisper of the wind, let us now turn our attention to a particular kind of shadow walker, the forgotten spy. These are not the figures etched into the grand narratives of history. No kings, no famous generals, no celebrated heroes. Instead, they are the quiet, unassuming souls whose courage and sacrifice remained largely unrecorded, their names lost to the sands of time. Their stories, though perhaps never fully known, offer a poignant glimpse into the human cost of a life lived in secrecy. Imagine for a moment a figure like Agnes, a laundress in a bustling castle town on the border of 2 warring duchies. Her days were a ceaseless rhythm of scrubbing and rinsing, the scent of lye soap and damp linen clinging to her hands. She was invisible, a part of the domestic hum, seen but rarely truly observed. Yet Agnes was an unlikely conduit for vital intelligence. Her work took her through the castle's inner courtyards, into the bustling servants' quarters, and even occasionally with the laundry near the private chambers of the lord and lady. Agnes wasn't driven by grand ideals or a thirst for power. Perhaps it was a small debt owed to a subtle man who offered her coin for harmless gossip, coin that could buy a precious extra loaf of bread for her hungry children. Or perhaps she was subtly coerced, a quiet threat lingering beneath a friendly smile. Her motive, whatever it was rooted in the harsh realities of survival. She would gather snippets of conversation, the grumbling of a guard about short rations hinting at depleted supplies. A casual remark from a squire's about the arrival of new siege engineers, suggesting an impending assault. The frequency with which a particular messenger from a rival lord was seen entering the castle. These weren't grand secrets, but fragments like scattered beads that, when strung together, formed a revealing necklace. The soft creak of the washboard as she scrubbed the rhythmic splash of water became a meditative backdrop to her silent surveillance. The smell of damp wool and earthy soap was her constant companion, a scent that disguised the sharp edge of her hidden purpose. Agnes wouldn't write anything down. She couldn't read or write beyond a few basic marks. Instead, she relied on her sharp memory, honed by a lifetime of remembering small details. Once a week on market day, she would take her finished laundry to a specific stall in the bustling town square. There, amidst the cheerful clamor of merchants hawking their wares and the lowing of livestock, she would exchange a few mundane words with an unassuming spice merchant. Their conversation would be about the price of salt or the quality of wool, but hidden within the mundane chatter were subtle code words, pre-arranged phrases that conveyed her latest observations. The sheep are looking lean this season might mean the garrison is underfed. The price of cloves has risen sharply, could signal the arrival of new well-funded troops. The tension for Agnes wasn't in grand daring escapes, but in the constant gnawing fear of exposure. A new guard, a suspicious stare, a sudden question about her activities. Any deviation from the expected could unravel her fragile charade. She lived with the knowledge that if discovered, her fate would be swift and brutal. Not only would she face unimaginable torment, but her children, her entire family, could also suffer the terrifying consequences of her betrayal. The distant hum of the market, usually a comforting sound of life, could at any moment transform into the clamor of an angry mob. One cold, damp morning, as a thick fog clung to the castle walls, Agnes delivered a crucial piece of information. A large contingent of archers was expected to reinforce the castle on the eve of a planned surprise attack by her employers. Her seemingly innocent remark about a new flock of birds arriving by the eastern gate was understood. The information was vital. It allowed the attacking forces to adjust their plans, turning a potential disaster into a decisive victory. But for Agnes, there was no celebration, no recognition. Her part remained a secret for her own safety and the continued effectiveness of the network. Perhaps years later, a change in power, a new lord with new loyalties, led to the dismantling of the old networks. Or perhaps one day, a subtle misstep, a tired glance caught the eye of someone too observant. We will never know the full truth. What we do know is that Agnes, like countless others in the medieval shadows, likely lived and died without ever receiving acknowledgement for her silent courage. Her story isn't about the grand sweep of armies, but about the quiet heroism of a woman trying to survive, caught between the crushing weight of two worlds. Her legacy is not in historical texts, but in the echoes of decisions shaped by her humble whispers, in battles won or lost by the subtle movements she observed. The medieval world, illuminated by the pale moon and the fading glow of distant hearths, was full of such forgotten figures. The miller who overheard a whispered conversation between knights exchanging news over their midday meal. The wandering minstrel whose songs carried coded messages between courts. The old woman who brewed herbal remedies and listened to the anxieties of the villagers, gleaning insights into local unrest. Their lives were threads woven so deeply into the fabric of daily existence that they became invisible. Their contributions unheralded, their sacrifices unmourned by the chroniclers of the age. These forgotten spies remind us that history is not just made by kings and conquerors, but also by the quiet, desperate acts of individuals in the shadows. Their struggles, their fears, and their quiet bravery are a testament to the complex, often cruel tapestry of human experience in the Middle Ages. As the night continues to deepen, let us allow their silent echoes to settle around us, a gentle reminder of the unseen forces that shaped a world long past. As the deep velvet cloak of the medieval night settles even further, and the last faint glimmer of flickering torchlight seems to vanish entirely, we gently shift our focus. We've journeyed through the unsettling quiet of a spy's double life, felt the chilling weight of a secret message, and glimpsed the brutal consequences of discovery. We've even honored the silent echoes of those forgotten souls, like Agnes, whose lives were threads woven into the vast hidden tapestry of medieval intrigue. Now, as the world outside your window perhaps grows stiller, and the sounds of the present day begin to fade into a comforting hum, let's allow our minds to float just above that intricate web of secrets. Think of the very air itself in the Middle Ages. It wasn't just a medium for breathing. It was a carrier of whispers, a silent witness to countless unsaid things. The scent of wood smoke, the dampness after a rain, the subtle chill of an approaching dawn. These sensory details were constant, yet within them secrets could float unnoticed or be snatched away by those who knew how to listen. We understand now that in this distant past, information was not easily disseminated. It was a fluid, almost ethereal thing, often intangible, existing more in the memory of a trusted courier or the careful observation of a loyal servant than in any widely published form. This very fragility of information made it immensely powerful. A single fact strategically placed could unravel years of meticulous planning. A misplaced rumor could ignite a war. The absence of mass media meant that trust became the ultimate currency in the exchange of news, and the silence that often accompanied these exchanges was not empty, but pregnant with unspoken truths. Consider the distant church bell once more. We've heard its gentle chime through the lonely nights of our imagined spy. But now let it resonate not just as a marker of time, but as a symbol of consistency in a world of constant flux. While human intentions and political landscapes shifted like sand, the rhythm of the church, the cycles of prayer and seasonal festivals, provided a predictable cadence. And yet, even within this spiritual sanctuary, whispers could travel, confessions could reveal unintended insights, and the sacred space could sometimes become an unwitting conduit for secular intrigue. The gentle, repetitive clang of the bell echoing across fields and through quiet villages carried its own kind of information, a reassurance of order even as chaos brewed just beneath the surface. This intricate dance of secrecy and discovery of hidden knowledge and public display was a fundamental part of medieval power. It shaped alliances, determined battle outcomes, and influenced the very fabric of society. The rulers of the age, from the mightiest kings to the most cunning local lords, understood that control over information was as vital as control over land or armies. And the people caught in this web, the spies, the messengers, the unsuspecting bystanders, played their roles often unwillingly in a drama far larger than themselves. As you drift now, imagine the subtle interplay of light and shadow. The flickering torchlight from our earlier moments, a symbol of precarious knowledge casting long dancing figures on ancient stone walls. Now, as those lights dim and the shadows deepen, reflect on how much of history remains unilluminated, hidden within the countless unrecorded whispers and unseen actions of individuals. The grand narratives are often built upon the silent sacrifices of the many. This soft interlude invites us to consider not just the danger of being a spy, but the very nature of secrets themselves. How they are born, how they are nurtured, and how inevitably they are sometimes revealed, often with profound consequences. It's a moment to let the anxieties of the spy's world recede, allowing the gentle understanding of the past to settle over you like a soft, comforting blanket. We are no longer actively tracking a lone figure. We are simply observing the pervasive influence of hidden information in a bygone era. The air around you is safe, your secrets are your own, and the only sounds are those meant for your peaceful slumber. The complex workings of medieval intrigue, with all its dangers and quiet dramas, now become like faint, distant echoes fading into the comfortable quiet of your own space. This shift allows us to move from the individual's harrowing experience to a broader understanding, preparing us for the gentle unraveling of the remaining threads of our story, easing us towards a sense of calm and gentle resolution. As the deep medieval night truly takes hold, painting the world in shades of charcoal and ink, and the only sounds are the soft whispers of the wind, let us consider what happens when a spy is exposed. It's not merely the individual's horrific fate that matters. The repercussions ripple outward, casting a long, chilling shadow over entire communities. The moment a spy is revealed, a silent, corrosive poison is unleashed, the ghost of suspicion. Imagine a village, perhaps one nestled by a quiet river where life flowed with predictable rhythms. The blacksmith's hammer striking steel, the baker's oven emitting the warm scent of fresh bread, the distant church bell marking the hours of prayer and rest. People knew each other, relied on each other. But then a rumor begins to circulate. Old Man Thomas, who always seemed a bit too quiet, or young Yalara, with her unusual habit of sketching maps on scraps of parchment, is suddenly dragged away by the Lord's men. Whispers follow, like unseen specters spreading through the narrow lanes and around crackling hearths. He was a spy. She was working for the enemy. The immediate effect is a profound sense of distrust. Suddenly, friendly faces seem to hold hidden meanings. A neighbor's casual question about troop movements might now be interpreted as an attempt to gather intelligence. A shared meal, once a symbol of camaraderie, becomes an uneasy exchange where every word is weighed and every glance scrutinized. The very air seems to thicken with unspoken questions. Who else knew? Who else is involved? Can I truly trust the person beside me? This pervasive doubt, once unleashed, is almost impossible to contain. It's like a fine, invisible dust that settles on everything, making even the most familiar sights and sounds feel alien and unsettling. The rhythmic creak of a wagon wheel on the road, once a sign of commerce, could now be the sound of someone escaping, or someone new arriving with ill intent. This ghost of suspicion didn't just haunt individuals, it haunted entire institutions. If a spy was found within a lord's household, every servant, every guard, every trusted advisor could fall under scrutiny. The lord might look upon his most loyal retainers with newly wary eyes, wondering if their allegiance was truly to him or to some unseen master. Meetings would become more guarded, conversations more coded, and the easy camaraderie that greased the wheels of daily life would vanish, replaced by a brittle formality. The flickering torchlight in the castle halls, which once danced playfully on tapestries, now cast long, menacing shadows that seemed to conceal watchful eyes. This climate of suspicion could lead to false accusations. In a world without reliable methods of investigation, fueled by fear and paranoia, even the smallest anomaly could be interpreted as a sign of treachery. A stutter when asked a direct question, a nervous habit, or simply being disliked by someone in power could be enough to condemn an innocent person. People might be denounced out of spite, jealousy, or a desperate desire to deflect suspicion from themselves. The concept of proof was often fluid, swayed by the accusations of powerful figures, or the terrified confessions of others under duress. The consequences for those falsely accused were nearly as dire as for a true spy. They too could face interrogation, torture, and public humiliation, their lives and reputations utterly destroyed, even if their innocence was eventually and often silently acknowledged. The quiet suffering of these innocent victims added to the unseen toll of medieval espionage, their names forever stained by a shadow that was not their own. The scent of fear, heavy and cold, would cling to these places of interrogation long after the accused was gone. Moreover, the presence of this pervasive suspicion could significantly disrupt daily life and governance. Trade might slow as merchants became wary of traveling through territories where informants were rampant. Communication between allies could become strained as each side began to suspect infiltration. Decisions that required trust and open exchange of information became fraught with risk, leading to delays, missteps, and sometimes outright failure. A crucial message might be delivered too late, not because of a slow horse, but because the messenger was held and questioned for days, simply out of precaution. The ghost of suspicion even extended to the very land itself. Roads that were once open and busy could suddenly become dangerous, populated by unseen eyes. Forests, once places of quiet solitude for hunters or woodcutters, could become havens for those seeking to escape or those seeking to entrap. The natural world, so vast and indifferent, was now overlaid with layers of human fear and mistrust. The distant hoot of an owl, a sound of nature, might now be interpreted as a signal, a coded message in the stillness. Ultimately, the exposure of a single spy often served a dual purpose for the authorities. While it rooted out a perceived threat, it also served as a powerful deterrent. The brutal public execution of a spy wasn't just punishment. It was a theatrical performance designed to sow fear and mistrust among the populace, making everyone wary of their neighbors and hesitant to engage in any activity that might be deemed suspicious. The memory of the spectacle, the chilling image of the condemned, would linger long after the crowds dispersed, silently reinforcing the message, "Do not betray." So as you rest in the safety of your own time, far from the subtle paranoia of the medieval world, remember that the true cost of espionage wasn't just paid by the agents themselves. It was paid by the communities, by the innocent, and by the very fabric of trust that holds societies together. The ghost of suspicion once conjured lingered long, poisoning the quiet corners of medieval life, and reminding everyone of the thin, precarious line between loyalty and doom. As the medieval night stretches on vast and silent, broken only by the soft, rhythmic creak of unseen timbers settling in ancient structures, let us turn our gaze from the lowly spy to the powerful figures who truly mastered the art of listening in the shadows, the listening kings. These monarchs, dukes, and powerful lords understood that while armies won battles, it was information that won wars, preserved dynasties, and solidified their often precarious grip on power. In an era without public polling or immediate news feeds, a ruler's understanding of their realm was entirely dependent on what their eyes and ears could gather. This meant cultivating a vast, informal network of informants, spies, and trusted messengers. They weren't just interested in the grand plans of rival kingdoms. They needed to know the murmurs in their own taverns, the grumbling in the peasant villages, and the subtle shifts in loyalty among their own powerful vassals. A discontented baron, a brewing peasant revolt, or a whispered plot within their own court could be far more dangerous than an external invasion. Consider a figure like Edward IV of England, often dubbed Longshanks, a king known for his strategic mind and his relentless pursuit of control, particularly over Wales and Scotland. Edward understood the immense value of intelligence. He didn't just send armies, he sent agents. These might be trusted knights disguised as merchants, clerks posing as pilgrims, or even priests on their spiritual rounds. Their mission to gauge public opinion, assess the strength of local fortifications, or identify leaders of resistance. Edward's court would have been a hub of whispered reports, each piece of information carefully weighed and analyzed like precious jewels. The very silence in his war room, broken only by the scratching of quills on parchment, would be heavy with the weight of unseen dangers. Or think of Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair. His reign was marked by intense power struggles, especially with the papacy and the Knights Templar. Philip was a master of political maneuvering, and a significant part of his success came from his sophisticated intelligence operations. He had agents embedded within the church hierarchy reporting on the Pope's intentions. He used spies to gather evidence, or fabricate it, against the wealthy and influential Templars, leading to their dramatic downfall. For Philip, information was a weapon, and he wielded it with ruthless efficiency. The flickering torchlight in his secret chambers would illuminate maps and dispatches revealing the hidden paths of power. These listening kings understood that their agents weren't just gathering facts, they were gathering intentions. Knowing what your enemy planned to do rather than just what they had done was the ultimate strategic advantage. This required a keen understanding of human nature, an ability to read between the lines of a messenger's report, and a willingness to act decisively on unconfirmed yet likely information. The subtle scent of old paper and ink mingled with the faint aroma of beeswax from countless candles would have permeated the private studies where these plans were laid. The methods employed by royal spy masters were often a refined version of what we've already discussed. They might employ couriers with diplomatic immunity as fronts for intelligence gathering. These envoys, officially there to discuss treaties or marriages, would subtly probe for weaknesses, assess military readiness, and even try to recruit disgruntled nobles. Their diplomatic pouches, seemingly innocent, could contain coded messages or reports on internal dissent. The quiet rustle of their silk garments, the soft murmur of their polite conversation, belied the dangerous game they played. They also used financial incentives. Gold and promises of land were powerful motivators for those willing to betray their liege lord. A noble burdened by debt, an ambitious knight seeking advancement, or a powerful merchant looking for favorable trade deals could all be turned into informants providing a stream of valuable intelligence from within their own circles. The faint metallic clink of coins being exchanged in a shadowed corner of a grand hall could signal the silent transfer of invaluable secrets. The challenges for these kings were immense. They had to verify the intelligence they received. In a world rife with disinformation and double agents, how could a king know if a report was genuine or a clever deception planted by a rival? This required multiple sources, cross-referencing, and a keen sense of intuition. A false report could lead to disastrous military campaigns, wasted resources, or a loss of trust among their own allies. The distant, repetitive clang of a blacksmith's hammer from the castle forge, usually a comforting sound, might echo the pounding anxiety of a king trying to discern truth from falsehood. Moreover, maintaining secrecy within their own intelligence networks was paramount. A leak could expose their agents, undermine their strategies, and reveal their vulnerabilities to enemies. Trust was a precious commodity rarely given and easily broken. The very notion of a secret service meant that its existence and the identities of its operatives had to remain the deepest of secrets, known only to a very select few. These listening kings were in essence the master strategists of their age, playing a complex game of chess where the pieces were not just armies and castles, but whispers, rumors, and the loyalty of their subjects. Their ability to gather, interpret, and act upon information, even in its most rudimentary forms, was a defining characteristic of successful medieval rule. They understood that ultimate power lay not just in overt displays of strength, but in the unseen currents of knowledge flowing beneath the surface. As the night deepens, drawing us closer to slumber, let us reflect on these powerful figures who from their grand thrones and fortified castles stretched their unseen tendrils into every corner of their realms. They remind us that even in a world seemingly devoid of modern technology, the human desire for knowledge and control, and the intricate, often brutal means to acquire it, remained as sharp and pervasive as any sword. As the medieval night truly settles, a vast star-dusted canopy over a sleeping world, and the distant hoot of an owl echoes through the stillness, let us delve into a more insidious aspect of medieval espionage: the false operation and the information trap. In a world where genuine intelligence was so difficult to acquire and verify, the temptation to create false intelligence to lead an enemy astray with clever deceptions was immense. This was the game within the game, a dance of shadows where the truth was not merely hidden, but actively distorted. Imagine the subtle art of disinformation. A rival lord might leak a seemingly credible rumor about his army's impending march towards the north, while his true intention was to strike south. Or a king facing a powerful internal rebellion might subtly spread news of vast foreign aid arriving, hoping to demoralize the rebels and make them believe their cause was hopeless. These were not random whispers. They were carefully crafted narratives designed to exploit the very thirst for information that medieval rulers possessed. The creak of a distant well pump, a sound of daily life, could ironically be heard by someone laying a trap with whispered lies. One common tactic was the planted document. A meticulously forged letter detailing a false alliance or a fabricated troop movement might be accidentally dropped or discovered by a seemingly unwitting commoner who then reports it to their lord. The parchment would look authentic. The seal might be expertly copied, a skill we touched upon earlier, and the content would be just plausible enough to raise alarm. The faint scent of old ink and parchment usually associated with genuine records would now carry the faint, unsettling aroma of deceit. The quiet rustle of the forged document as it passed through unsuspecting hands would be a sound of impending misdirection. Then there were the feigned defections. An agent utterly loyal to their true master might be instructed to deliberately defect to the enemy side. This was an incredibly dangerous game. The defector would have to endure intense interrogation, potentially torture, as we discussed, to prove their sincerity. They would offer seemingly valuable but ultimately misleading information to their new masters, slowly gaining their trust. Their goal was not to gather intelligence, but to feed false intelligence, to subtly alter troop movements, to misdirect resources, to spread paranoia about internal betrayals within the enemy's own ranks. The psychological toll on such an agent, forced to live a double life, constantly fearing exposure from both sides, was unimaginable. The chilling touch of a cold dungeon wall, the bitter taste of fear would be their constant companions. Consider a scenario: a powerful duke wishes to draw his rival's army into unfavorable terrain. He might send a seemingly disgruntled knight who escapes his service and offers his loyalty to the rival. This knight, after proving his worth, would then reveal a weakness in the duke's defenses, or suggest a seemingly advantageous route for an attack. A route that in reality leads into a well-laid ambush. The clanking of the knight's armor as he defects, the seemingly genuine anger in his voice, would all be part of the elaborate charade designed to lure the enemy into a trap. The information trap could also be more passive. A ruler might intentionally leak sensitive but false information into their own court, then quietly observe who picks up on it, and more importantly, where it eventually resurfaces. If the false information appeared in the enemy's hands, it immediately identified the traitor within their own ranks. This was a brutal but effective way of rooting out spies, turning the very act of intelligence gathering against the gatherers. The flickering torchlight in the Lord's private study would cast long shadows as he awaited the outcome of his dangerous game, studying the faces of his courtiers for any sign of betrayal. The very silence of the medieval world, the lack of widespread communication, made these traps so potent. Without multiple independent sources to verify information, a single compelling piece of false intelligence could easily be believed. Rumors spread quickly and were difficult to dispel. A lie once planted could take root and grow into a formidable obstacle for an unsuspecting enemy. The soft whisper of the wind through a castle courtyard, usually a soothing sound, could carry the seeds of carefully cultivated lies. The human element was always central. The success of a false operation depended on the psychological manipulation of the target. It required an understanding of their fears, their ambitions, and their strategic weaknesses. It preyed on the universal desire for a decisive advantage, leading adversaries to grasp at seemingly easy opportunities that were in fact cleverly disguised snares. This intricate dance of deception reminds us that the medieval intelligence game was far more complex than simple information gathering. It was a battlefield of minds where cunning and guile were as important as brute force. The why you couldn't survive aspect here lies not just in being caught, but in being utterly and irrevocably misled, lured into a fatal mistake by information that was designed to be believed, yet was wholly untrue. To be a commander acting on such information was to walk blindfolded into a pit. As the night draws deeper, pulling us gently towards rest, consider the insidious nature of these information traps. They highlight the constant tension between trust and suspicion, and the ever-present danger of a world where appearances could be meticulously crafted to conceal the most dangerous of lies. In this quiet corner of the past, even the act of listening, so vital for survival, could lead one directly into the jaws of deceit. As the deep medieval night deepens further, drawing us closer to the cusp of dawn, and the world outside softens into a profound quiet, let us contemplate something truly profound in the realm of medieval espionage: the true value of a secret. In a time of vast, slow communication and limited information, a single seemingly minor piece of intelligence could possess a power far greater than gold, or even a formidable army. It was the butterfly effect of the past, where a quiet flutter of information could trigger a storm of historical consequence. Imagine a world where a king's most vital decisions, the fate of entire campaigns, or the very stability of a kingdom could hinge on a whispered detail. It wasn't always about grand schemes or vast battle plans. Sometimes the most potent secrets were small, almost mundane, yet their implications were immense. Consider, for example, the health of a powerful ruler. In an age where succession was often unstable and the death of a king could plunge a realm into civil war, a secret illness was a prize beyond measure for rival factions. If a spy could confirm that a seemingly robust monarch was in fact gravely ill and likely to die soon, this information could trigger a flurry of diplomatic maneuvers, troop movements, and even assassination plots. Knowing that the king's grip was weakening allowed rivals to position themselves to gather support or to prepare for a swift strike once the news became public. The faint earthy scent of medicinal herbs from the sick room, usually a sign of care, could become a chilling indicator of impending political upheaval if only a spy could report it. Or perhaps the secret involved financial weakness. A powerful lord might project an image of immense wealth and endless resources, but a spy's quiet observation could reveal the truth. His coffers were nearly empty, his vassals discontented, his army unpaid. This kind of intelligence delivered discreetly could embolden a weaker neighbor to press a territorial claim or convince potential allies to abandon him. A king, knowing his enemy was on the brink of bankruptcy, might launch a preemptive strike or demand crippling concessions in a peace treaty. The subtle rhythmic clink of coins being counted, or more tellingly, the absence of such sounds from the treasury, could be a secret worth millions. Even something as simple as troop morale could be a game changer. A spy might report that the enemy soldiers were mutinous due to lack of food, or that a key general was deeply unpopular. This kind of information, seemingly insignificant amidst the thunder of war, could lead a commander to alter their battle plans, opting for a direct assault instead of a cautious siege, knowing that the enemy's internal weaknesses would hasten their collapse. The hushed, angry whispers from a distant encampment carried on the night wind could spell doom for an entire army. The cold metal of a soldier's forgotten helmet on the ground dulled by rain could silently reflect the weariness of an army on the brink of revolt. Another potent secret could be a personal weakness or a hidden scandal. In an era obsessed with honor, lineage, and religious piety, a lord's secret affair, a hidden bastard child, or a past act of cowardice, if revealed, could utterly destroy their reputation and legitimacy. Blackmail became a powerful tool. A spy could uncover such a secret, and then their master could use it to force a rival into submission to gain concessions, or to simply neutralize them as a threat without ever resorting to open conflict. The very silence of a private chamber, meant for intimacy, could hold the weight of a devastating, life-altering secret. Think of the location of a hidden weakness in a seemingly impregnable fortress. Years of construction, massive stone walls, formidable towers. All could be rendered moot by a single quiet piece of information, a secret passage known only to a few, a vulnerable section of the curtain wall, or a hidden water source that could be poisoned or cut off. A spy observing for weeks or months might notice a recurring pattern. A single guard always passing by a certain unmonitored gate, or a faint discoloration on a wall that suggests a disguised entrance. This quiet observation, combined with a crucial detail, could save thousands of lives and shorten a siege by months. The damp, earthy scent of a hidden tunnel, or the subtle difference in the texture of stone, could be the key to victory. These secrets, often gathered through painstaking observation and immense personal risk, were not mere facts. They were levers of power capable of shifting the balance of medieval politics, war, and society. They highlight the incredible vulnerability of a world without encrypted communication, where a single unobserved glance or an overheard whisper could cascade into monumental historical events. The stakes were always astronomically high, and the margins for error infinitesimally small. As the quiet of the night settles, let us appreciate the profound truth in the Middle Ages. The most dangerous weapon was not always the sword nor the trebuchet, but the unearthing of a hidden truth. A secret once revealed could change everything, pouring quietly into the flow of history, reshaping destinies and redirecting the course of entire nations. The whisper of a single piece of information, unheard by most yet held in the mind of a spy, truly carried the weight of worlds. As the deep medieval night which has held us captive in its shadowy embrace begins its slow retreat, we approach a most precious and rare moment for any medieval spy: the arrival of a safe dawn. This isn't the grand, triumphant return of a celebrated hero, but a quiet, profound sense of relief, a fragile liberation that whispers of survival. For a spy, such a dawn might not mean the end of danger, but merely a temporary reprieve, a breath drawn deep before the next shadow falls. Imagine a spy who has successfully completed their mission. A crucial piece of intelligence delivered, a dangerous deception executed, or perhaps simply a night spent observing without being observed. The hours of darkness filled with heightened senses, the thrum of anxiety beneath the ribs, and the constant fear of discovery now begin to yield to the first, almost imperceptible lightening of the sky. The very first sign might be a subtle change in the air. The intense cold of the deepest night might soften, replaced by a fresh, cool dampness. The pervasive scent of damp earth and stale wood smoke clinging to every shadow begins to dissipate, giving way to the faint, crisp aroma of dew on grass, or the distant, clean smell of a newly lit hearth fire. The absolute silence of the pre-dawn hours might be broken by the first tentative stirrings of the natural world, the soft chirping of a robin, or the rustle of a squirrel in the distant trees. These gentle sounds, usually unremarkable, would be music to the spy's ears, signaling the return of the familiar, the mundane, the safe. Perhaps our spy is hidden in a small, cramped garret room, or a hidden alcove overlooking a sleeping courtyard. They have spent the night deciphering a coded message, or simply waiting for a contact. Now, through a tiny, unglazed window, they see the first faint hint of gray seeping into the eastern sky. This isn't the dramatic explosion of a sunrise, but a gradual, almost shy unfolding of light. The shadows, which had been so absolute and menacing, begin to soften, to shrink, retreating into corners and beneath eaves. The outline of a distant chimney, then a roofline, slowly emerge from the gloom. the most profound sensation would be the release of tension, the tautness in the shoulders, the tightness in the gut, the relentless alertness of the mind. All these begin to loosen infinitesimally, yet profoundly. It's not an exhale of triumph, but a slow, quiet sigh of exhaustion. For a few precious moments, the spy can allow themselves to simply be without the crushing weight of their double identity or the imminent threat of capture. The warmth of a single remaining ember in a small brazier casting a weak orange glow would feel like a beacon of safety. The sounds of the waking world would filter in each one a confirmation of fleeting safety. The distant crow of a rooster, sharp and clear, announcing the start of a new day. The muffled sound of a stable boy stirring or the clatter of a pot from a nearby kitchen. These sounds are mundane, ordinary, yet for the spy they represent the return to a world where their disguise is once again their shield. The gentle ringing of a distant church bell, which earlier marked the lonely hours of the night, now takes on a different meaning. A return to the established rhythm of life, a comforting regularity. For some spies, this safe dawn might mean a chance to blend back into their civilian life, to become the merchant, the laundress, the scribe once more. They might slip out into the waking streets, their footsteps lightened by relief, their face carefully composed to show nothing but the weariness of an early riser. The texture of the rough cobbled street underfoot, usually unnoticed, would feel solid, real, anchoring them back to their assumed reality. For others, the dawn might signal the beginning of a long, arduous journey back to their own territory, carrying the precious, dangerous information. Each step of the horse, each turn of the road would be met with renewed caution, but also with the quiet hope of reaching safety. The sun, as it eventually crests the horizon, would wash the landscape in a soft golden light, transforming the shadowed threats of the night into visible, manageable forms. The scent of fresh morning air, cool and clean, would be a welcome antidote to the musty, fear-laden air of the night. This safe dawn is a poignant moment in the life of a medieval spy because it is so fragile, so fleeting. It is a temporary reprieve, not a permanent end to the danger. Yet in that brief window of quiet relief, there is a profound sense of deliverance. It is the moment when the spy, having navigated the treacherous waters of the dark, sees the first glimpse of a calm shore. It is the unspoken prayer of survival, whispered by the very air as it carries the scent of a new day. As your own night deepens into slumber, let this image of a medieval spy finding a moment of fragile peace, a safe dawn after a long night of peril, wash over you. It's a reminder that even in the most dangerous of times, moments of quiet resolution and gentle relief can be found, leading us gently towards a deeper, more peaceful rest. As the deep medieval night, with all its hidden whispers and shadowed dangers, finally recedes, and the first true light of dawn begins to paint the sky, we find ourselves gently pulled back to the present. The air around you is no longer filled with the damp scent of ancient stone or the metallic tang of fear. Instead, it carries the familiar, comforting aroma of your own space, perhaps the subtle scent of your favorite blanket, or the faint, distant hum of the modern world outside your window. We've drifted through a time where information was a precious, perilous commodity, and a quiet whisper could determine the fate of kingdoms. We felt the chilling weight of a double life, the gnawing anxiety of constant vigilance, and the brutal consequences of discovery. We've even honored the silent sacrifices of those forgotten figures like Agnes, whose lives were mere threads in the vast, unseen tapestry of medieval intrigue. Now, as you lie in the serene safety of your own bed, consider the profound contrast between their world and yours. Imagine the simple luxury of being able to speak freely, to trust the faces around you, to have information readily available at your fingertips. There is no need for invisible ink, no fear of a knock on the door in the dead of night, no chilling dread of a friendly question that hides a deadly trap. The silence around you is truly peaceful, not pregnant with unspoken threats. The only flickering lights are from your own devices, perfectly harmless. Think of the precious gift of sleep itself. For the medieval spy, true deep rest would have been a rare and fleeting luxury, constantly interrupted by the prickle of paranoia or the demands of their dangerous calling. Every shadow might have hidden a watcher, every sound a potential threat. But for you now, those shadows are merely illusions, and the sounds outside are just the gentle breath of the world. The rhythmic creak of your own home settling is a comforting song, not a warning. We have explored the why you couldn't survive aspects of that bygone era, not to instill fear, but to foster a deeper appreciation for the quiet comforts and unwavering security of our own time. To understand the hardships of the past is to truly cherish the peace of the present. The distant church bell which echoed with such solemnity through the lonely medieval nights now exists only as a lingering memory in your mind, a gentle reminder of history's long winding path. The stories of spies and secrets of betrayal and courage are now simply echoes, soft and fading, carried away by the gentle currents of your breath. They are lessons learned, journeys completed, leaving behind only a sense of profound calm. You are safe. You are warm. You are utterly wonderfully free from the silent battles fought in the shadows of a distant past. Allow the lingering images, the cloaked figures, the whispered secrets, the silent cobbled streets, to dissolve now like mist in the morning sun. Let the echoes of their fears fade into the comfortable quiet of your own space. This time there are no more secrets to keep, no more dangers to navigate. Only the profound, comforting stillness of the present moment waiting to embrace you completely. This journey into the medieval shadows has reached its gentle conclusion. The historical truths, the human struggles have been absorbed, leaving behind a peaceful understanding. Now let the embrace of deep restorative sleep welcome you. You are home, you are safe, and the only mysteries left are those waiting for you in your dreams.